The plan, blueprint of a pyramid scheme. Cemeteries and psychology. When William S. Castleberry first encountered Carl Renborg at the Dale Carnegie course about 1940, Castleberry was promoting himself on local radio in the Los Angeles area with a 15-minute psychology show. He dispensed free advice to attract paying clients for his psychological counseling services. According to Renborg's biography, when they met, Castleberry was, quote, desperately short of cash. Renborg was also desperate. After 10 years of operation, Neutralite had 40 distributors, all in Southern California. There had been no growth in the sales channel since mid-July 1938, when Renborg reorganized the sales program, adopted the new company name, and moved into a larger facility, thanks to Calcoat's funding. He even offered overrides to distributors on sales volume of distributors they recruited for the company, but this did little to help grow business. Renborg's first impression of Castleberry was dismal, but after the Dale Carnegie program, Castleberry signed up as a Neutralite distributor and began recommending the Neutralite potions and recruiting his clients. The practice of health professionals leveraging patient trust to recruit and sell them MLM products has since become a pervasive national pattern among medical doctors, psychologists, physical therapists, dentists, and chiropractors. In 1999, New York Times article, quote, "Doctors' offices turn into sales rooms," reported that the American Medical Association was unable to resolve the division that had spread through the ranks of the medical community. Castleberry was already 48 when he met Renborg, 53. Both had begun their current careers later in life. Neither had found much success after years of struggle, yet still held lofty aspirations. In the midst of the nation's worst economic downturn, Castleberry had gone back to school to gain an advanced degree in psychology and called himself doctor. His credentials were academic, but he also had a background in the hard knocks of sales, where survival depends on psychological persuasion and sometimes heavy-handed manipulation. Castleberry sold kitchenware, door-to-door, and had also had real estate experience. The sales orientation carried over as a lettered professional. In addition to using radio exposure to sell counseling service, he also hawked his book, How to Use Psychology in Everyday Living, a 324-page treatise that presents psychology as a set of scientific rules for living. The theme of moral precepts and authoritative guidelines provided by the science of psychology is made even more explicit in his later book, published in 1969, How to Work Miracles in Your Life: The Golden Secrets of Successful Living. The use of psychology as a secret tool for achieving financial success and happiness would later become prominent in all MLM programs modeled on Neutralite. Very similar in tone, and published just 2 years after Dale Carnegie's famous work, How to Win Friends, Castleberry's How to Use Psychology was an early example of the self-help genre that was previously directed at salespeople for teaching commercial persuasion techniques, but would later go mainstream for effectiveness in all areas of life. Castleberry's book offers similar platitudes and homilies as Carnegie's, and it even recommends Carnegie's book for further reading. But Castleberry's is wrapped in the authority of psychology and his PhD title. Yet after more than 8 years on the air as an advice-dispensing doctor, Castleberry's radio show was, quote, not hugely popular. Urgent need for money may explain why Castleberry signed on as a vitamin pill salesman with a struggling and unknown health company whose owner had no academic degree or any training in nutrition. As events unfolded, however, and consistent with Renborg's past experience of attracting backers and managers with ulterior or even nefarious motives, it is more likely that Castleberry saw a larger opportunity in Nutrilite and Renborg. The opportunity would require ramping up the already unfounded claims about Nutrilite's alleged health benefits to boost the pill's marketability. The deception required for such marketing falsehoods proved no barrier to Castleberry. Beyond increasing the level of deception for the products, the opportunity that would soon be seized by Castleberry and a future cohort also required getting Nutrilite's sales operation out of Renborg's hands and securing complete control. Renborg would then be recast in the fictional narrative as a nutrition expert with formal training. Later, he would be promoted as the father of the entire vitamin and supplement industry. This opportunity to gain control over the business and reposition the company and its owner in a fictional narrative became apparent to Castleberry during early conversations with Renborg, who confessed deep frustrations, a history of failures, and long-time search for sales managers to deliver him to his rightful destiny of fame and wealth. As a Nutrilite distributor, Castleberry was not very successful. Almost 3 years after signing up, Castleberry was still working part-time at an aircraft company. Renborg's own fortunes deteriorated significantly. The company had no sales growth, and his marriage ended. At the Douglas Aircraft Factory, Castleberry met his future partner, Lee S. Mittinger, described as, quote, burly and flamboyant, who, quote, resembled a classic salesman. He had experience, quote, selling tires, insurance, kitchen utensils, and burial plots from Maine to California. Castleberry and Mittinger were both nearing age 50. The men, opposites in appearance, but sharing a common interest in sales, became fast friends. Castleberry told Mittinger about what he knew of Renborg, Nutrilite, and the vitamin pill business. Given what we know now about the FDA's prosecution of Mittinger and Castleberry for deception when they took over Nutrilite's sales, and considering the decades of fraud allegations relating to the unique sales plan the two subsequently invented, Mittinger's business background warrants attention. His sales training and history, its values, practices, and ethics add yet another thread woven into, quote, the plan he and Castleberry formulated, which is known today as multi-level marketing. In the mid-1930s, in Glendale, California, Mittinger was a sales trainer at a mortuary service and cemetery, Forest Lawn, where he managed a team of more than 100 salesmen. Census Bureau records say Mittinger was a 35-year-old bond salesman with an 8th grade education. He and his wife and 2 children lived in Glendale in a $35 per month rental house. 10 years later, a few years before he met Castleberry, he reportedly made $4,150 a year in 1940 currency. This appears to be his last sales job before working at the factory and beginning his collaboration with Castleberry and Nutrilite. The 1940s income, quote, highly lucrative at the time, was likely from selling car tires, a profitable opportunity probably created by wartime shortages and abruptly ended when price controls were instituted in 1942. Forest Lawn in the 1930s was, as it is today, America's most famous cemetery. It covers more than 300 acres. Best known as the, quote, Cemetery of the Stars. It attracts more than 1 million visitors per year. Uniquely, it is also a site for weddings. Ronald Reagan reportedly married Jane Wyman there in 1940. Celebrities including George Burns and Gracie Allen, W.C. Fields, Tom Mix, Sammy Davis Jr., Walt Disney, Lon Chaney, and Nat King Cole made Forest Lawn in Glendale their final resting place. From its earliest days, Forest Lawn was seen by authors and social observers as an extraordinary business and cultural phenomenon, distinctly American. A new force that reshaped how Americans perceived and defined one of the most significant aspects of any culture, the meaning of death. Hubert Eaton founded Forest Lawn after a transformational moment of, quote, miraculous compassion, in which he vowed to change America's view of death. Eaton even claimed to have a special business partner. Quote, Christ in business, he told members of a Rotary Club, is the greatest thing that happened to business. We must, in return, give business to carry on for Christ. The plan Castleberry and Mittinger would go on to create would have a similar impact on another fundamental element of American culture, the meaning and purpose of success. Just as Forest Lawn's interpretation and trappings sold at exorbitant profit overwhelmed traditional values of family, faith, loss, and grief, Castleberry and Mittinger's legacy would hijack and overwhelm traditional views of livelihood, success, and the boundaries separating social from commercial relationships. In a 2010 article in the Los Angeles Magazine, author Ben Ehrenreich said Forest Lawn came to represent America's, quote, euphoric approach to mortality, making it sunny, cheerful, lifelike. A decade and a half after Forest Lawn was established, Mittinger was teaching Eaton's blissful and providential sales philosophy at Forest Lawn to sales agents, getting a commission every time one of them would translate the view of death as a, quote, beginning, manifested in real estate, monuments, purchase ceremonies, and other trappings offered for sale. Mittinger's sales agents were selling an entirely new way of thinking about life and death. In a 2016 article, Los Angeles is Killing Us, Finding the Secrets of Mortality in LA's Most Legendary Cemeteries, writer Adrian Kudler shows how the new philosophy became reality in Forest Lawn, not just with lofty words, but with audacious displays of copied European art and sculptures, facsimiles of famous churches and cathedrals, and hundreds of acres of lush green fields and ponds with fountains in an arid region that perennially struggles for water. The, quote, eternity promised to the dead mirrored the American dream, in which higher social status in the afterlife could be acquired in reserved areas of the cemetery, exclusively for the great and famous, or any willing to pay a higher price. The 1948 novel The Loved One by English writer Evelyn Waugh parodied the sales and marketing of Forest Lawn as symptomatic of America's, quote, endless infancy. Distinct sections of the cemetery based on sales approach and customer profile have dreamlike fantasy names, including Babyland, Graceland, Inspiration Slope, Slumberland, Sweet Memories, and Dawn of Tomorrow. Quote, I am entirely obsessed with Forest Lawn and plan a long short story about it, Waugh wrote to a colleague while working on a screenplay in California. It is an entirely unique place, the only thing in California that is not a copy of something else. Forest Lawn also played a central role in Aldous Huxley's satirical novel After Many a Summer Dies the Swan. Huxley's impressions of American culture exemplified at Forest Lawn have been described as, quote, narcissism, superficiality, and obsession with youth. His Forest Lawn-inspired book was published 7 years after his famous dystopian novel, Brave New World. Huxley wrote Brave New World after an earlier visit to the United States in which he encountered a new culture with predominantly narcissistic personality types exuding, quote, commercial cheeriness, while ruled by the rigid requirements of mass manufacturing and marketing. Multi-level marketing did not offer cemetery plots among its array of lures, yet the culture of the in-home cemetery plot sales world carried over. The adept use of charging fees based on immeasurable time and undefinable benefits, quote, perpetual care and eternal peacefulness are mirrored in MLM's promises of, quote, infinite expansion, unlimited income, and total success. The psychological manipulations of personal grief or fear of death were copied in MLM's claims to provide lifetime security and a safe haven from economic downturns or obsolescence. Mettinger's experience recruiting, motivating, and replacing an ever-churning cemetery plot sales force carried over to a plan based on 60 to 80% annual attrition with near total loss rates.